All right, we're good to go. Okay. Morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. Today, we have Craig from Headlight, and he's going to be going over some of the updates to the progress payment, some of the automation stuff that we've been doing recently. So, with that, Craig, go ahead.
Thanks, Cord. I'll share my screen here. So he mentioned updates to progress payments. The primary thing I'm going to show here today is some of the changes to how materials on hand is going to be recorded moving forward. But there is another update to how we're helping automate retention being withheld in state-funded projects. So I think we've mentioned that before, but for those projects that are entirely state-funded, you are withholding a certain amount, and we've set it up to automatically do that moving forward according to the kind of rules that the state has. So that's another thing that we're hoping to activate both of these features here this week. And yeah, starting next week, then you would see these changes on payments. I did want to highlight, basically, I went through our system and identified projects that have used or recorded materials on hand in their payments, like directly within the form, how it currently works. And these are projects basically that might run into issues with this new setup I'm going to show you in a little bit. So I've kind of flagged them, and we're not going to activate this new material on hand feature for these projects immediately. I think Cord and I, and maybe others, will look at what is in each of these and decide one at a time if we want to turn this on. So the features I'm going to show or discuss here can all be activated on a project by project basis. We're hoping to just turn it on across HDOT generally, but these ones I'm going to manually leave off until we confirm everything's all right and we're not going to screw you up is the idea. These are the projects I think that have used this in the form to date. What I'm going to show actually is something. Oh, here, I'll speak to that in a little bit. The second part of this I wanted to say is that I mentioned that automation of the retention part would only apply to the state-funded projects. These were the projects that I was able to identify in Headlight that are entirely state-funded. It doesn't mean there aren't others. If you are working on an entirely state-funded project that I don't have listed here, please let Cord and I know, because I can also activate that retention feature on those projects if there are others, but these are the only ones I've identified so far. That also can be turned on or off on a per project basis, and that's something we're going to do at project setup moving forward. So if in that project setup, we have the template for you to submit the pay items for the project, and one of the columns for that is whether each item is par or non-par. And if they're all marked non-par, we would activate this feature at project setup. For either of these things I'm discussing or going to show here, if you run into trouble with it or can't figure it out, definitely contact Cord and I right away. Like I said, it's something we could turn off if you had to, say, immediately process a payment and we couldn't quite figure it out with the new setup. We could always revert it to what you've been using to date. So don't panic is what I'm getting at, and we can help you out if needed. These features are meant to make your lives easier overall. So if there's anything that does trip you up or is making things more difficult, definitely let us know and we can hopefully resolve that. I'm on our QA server here and I was just going to demo something on this project. So Willie, if you're on here, don't panic. I'm not messing with your data. I'm on our test server here. But I've just set up one payment with some materials on hand to date. The key thing that's different that you guys need to be aware of for tracking materials on hand is that your materials on hand needs to be put into the pay item spreadsheet, just like in this example, you can see I've put in 4 different pay items, 2 of which are just we're paying out this concrete sidewalk being installed and roadway excavation, but I've included materials on hand for these other 2 items. So all the materials on hand needs to go into the spreadsheet, just like fully paid out items as well. And this tag of materials on hand is the key to letting the payment form know that this is a material on hand. This is actually something you have been able to do regardless, but I think most people have been putting materials on hand directly within the form. There's the section near the bottom where you could add materials on hand. And now you need to add it in the spreadsheet, and then it will show up in the form, and I'll show you how that works and kind of why that change was made. So this is an example. I already created this progress payment, including these 4 items. And this is what that looks like. So it's already fully approved, this example document I've made, thus it says it's locked and can't be edited. But you'll see none of the payment totals have really, all this should look the same to what you're used to seeing, the payment totals, the previous payments. But there is this new section here now just below where it shows all of the project materials on hand to date, including new entries. So this one was this was the first instance of materials on hand being recorded on this project, and it shows that I put it in for October 10th, and I added a total quantity of 500 for this item and a total of 1,000 for this item. So this little section, project materials on hand, is going to show your total summary of materials on hand before this payment and in this payment. This just happens to be the first one, so it only includes this column added in payment. There was nothing before this payment. And what that looks like below that, then you have your regular work item ledger. This hasn't changed either. But you can see there's a separate section just for the materials on hand additions as well. And this is where I'll do an entire example right after this. But I wanted to show what it would look like for your first payment and then the second payment of items being added together. So basically these showed up automatically in this section because I included that pay item with the tag materials on hand. It brought in the identified item cost from the contract. You could rename the description. I didn't in this case. And the quantities that I included in that spreadsheet show up. And this unit cost, I actually manually typed in what I wanted it to be. In this case, I typed in the exact item cost from the contract, but I'll show you in a subsequent payment how you can actually alter that. Like say if you wanted to pay less than the total item cost for that stockpiled item, you can do so and basically create the total amount you're wanting to. So that is what that looks like in the payment. As I said, I've already fully approved this one because I want to show you an example of a subsequent payment now. So I'm gonna, any initial questions, I suppose, feel free to hop in, but I'll demo what my second payment will look like here. So I have made additional pay item entries. I just entered these 3 before we hopped on here to make it a little quicker. But I wanted to add 2 more materials on hand additions, and I just included another amount of clearing and grubbing to pay. And I've already put that into a diary here. Actually, they're not an approved diary yet. One moment. So all your items on the pay item spreadsheet need to be included in an approved diary, which you guys should be familiar with already, I think. So I'm going to create a diary, submit it, and approve it. And now these items, now that they're locked, will be usable in a progress payment. So I'm going to just select those three again. Obviously, I could select whatever pay item entries I want, but I'm just going to use these three and then select progress payment. You could alter the title if you want or the date. Actually, I'd put these in on 11/4. I'll backdate it to 11/4. And now I'll fill out the form for that payment. And now, if I scroll down, you can see the materials on hand it's the same items that I had put in the previous payment, but now there are quantities from before the payment and quantities added in this payment. If I expand those out, it'll show you the dates that each of those entries were created. And you can see that these ones that I've just added in this November 4th they have the quantity, but they don't have a cost per unit assigned yet. And where that happens is down here in that materials on hand additions. You can see it shows the item cost for the full item payment, but as I mentioned, you can put in whatever unit cost you want to put the materials on hand in as. So for an example, I'm just going to put this one as the full unit cost, but maybe I'll put this one in just as 150 instead of the full 210. So now here's the total amounts that I'm saying the materials on hand are worth. And if I go up here, you'll see this section automatically updates with those values. And the interesting thing it now does is here I had these entered in as the same unit cost, but you can see I put in materials on hand at different unit costs at different times, and it adds up what your total quantity is now of that stockpile, essentially of aggregate base. And then it says your total unit cost of that stockpile is now this. It does the math to show what your total value, your total units, and then divides it out. And where that's going to be important is, let's say in a subsequent payment, I just put in aggregate base as being paid out in the work item ledger. It will first, well, I can even show that here in a little bit, but it will first use up the materials on hand and then start using the rest of the contracted amount of that item. So in this case, I'm going to just save this. One other note, oh, don't mind this. This is because I'm on QA, it's doing some things. But up here, then under the way the materials on hand shows at the top here, this has not changed from previously, but you can always check your totals of your materials on hand then at the top. I did include that other item to pay out, so that's what this is showing. So your totals shouldn't have changed, but obviously you want to check that for each payment as well. So I'm going to save this and just approve it and then show you what we can do on a subsequent payment. So I have this set up so that I can just approve it straight through without needing other people. So I can do that quickly. But you'll have to get the engineer, contractor, CE, and DE, of course. Okay, so this payment is complete. And let's say I want to now start using my stockpile of aggregate base I had created in the materials on hand section. We'll just put in another pay item entry for the following month. I'll do two of them, I guess. And we'll do 304.1, 3.01. Oops, I missed it. So let's say we're going to install, or my total materials on hand for that to date is 425. Okay, about 1,000. I'm going to use more than that 1,000 in this case. We're going to put in 1,100. And then I'm just going to use part of that other stockpile I had, or that other material on hand that I had. So 606.2. And we'll just use 500 of that. Okay, so those I'm going to include in a diary then. Here we are. Approve that. And then I'll make my payment out of those new items. And go in to fill it out. And if we go down to here, you'll see that it is now, we are using up the entirety of this material on hand. It had 925. We're using the full 925. So after this payment, I'll have 0. But with this one, I'm using 500. So there will be 1,000 remaining after this. And so that our total, it just includes this. And you'll see in this case, it used 925 of that stockpile. So down here under the work item ledger, we're actually using this full 1,000. So it's basically using up that entire pile plus a little bit more of the actual work item from the contract. So it will basically automatically use up the materials on hand if that item is included in the payment. Any questions on how that works or how you'd have to enter materials on hand via the spreadsheet now instead of directly within the form?
There's a couple of questions in the chat, Craig.
Oh, sorry, wasn't paying attention to that. Here we go. What do we got? Will the materials on hand section show a subtotal of the payment amount? It is sorely needed on the PDF of each progress payment. It's not currently in the monthly summary. It seems to be trivial calculation for. So that is, let me actually go to the PDF of this and just show you what that looks like then. Download the PDF. All right, this isn't quite right. What's going on? Let me try something different. I'm going to go to that previous payment that I completed to show it to you. Here, it does show the total materials on hand additions, but I think what you're looking for is that there is now this project materials on hand summary section that shows the totals of each of the materials on hand. Is that what you're asking about?
I'm not quite, and Kelvin, correct me if I'm wrong. I think what we were looking for, and I think this is also a previous request as well, where it totals what is the running total of materials on hand for that.
Yes, I guess we have the individuals. I just need a little sum total would be helpful for each of these subsections, is kind of what you're saying, right?
I believe so, Kelvin, correct
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
Because up here it does have your total of the additions. That's definitely in here. And there's a debits section if you had that included as well. So that's good feedback, Kelvin. Maybe I can have it do just a little sum number at the bottom of these two sections would probably be useful. Okay.
And then there was one more question. It said, Justin said, can a notification to the RE be sent when a progress payment is completed? So I know with when it's sent to your court, you do get an email, but I understand your question of when it's completed and it's fully approved, there's still a next step, right, of sending it and putting it into fiscal's spreadsheet. So yeah, that would be helpful. It's a good comment, and I'd be curious, Craig, to see what you guys could do with that. I assume it wouldn't be too difficult.
I think we can easily do that, and I think we've done that with other document types within Headlight, just notifying a certain role upon final completion. I think I can do that relatively quickly. So let me just write that down so I make sure I get it correctly.
Yeah, it's
Would
also
that
similar to the.
you,
Oh, sorry.
oh, I was just going to ask a follow-up question. They said RE, and that's generally the role on Oahu, I know. Would the engineer or whomever else is doing that same step for other islands want that as well? They're not always an RE on the other islands, I think, right?
Maybe maybe the notification should be sent to all parties. Does
Yeah, would that
everybody see,
including the contractor? Or
does anybody see that as an issue if all parties in the progress payment, once it's done, gets a notification saying this has been approved? Because that would surely less complicate the tracking, especially with art. There's only REs in Oahu. I guess you could send it to construction engineers or the author of the payment, but it may just be useful for everybody to know when everybody gets an email when the payment has been approved. So I'd just be curious to get all of your folks' thoughts on that.
well, I
Raise your
think we could.
virtual hand if you think that that will be that's not a problem if all parties get an email notification when the project statement is completed.
Yeah, PE and RE, I think we could do. I think we could also do everybody in the approval
At least
workflow.
project engineer. Yeah.
If it gets too annoying for CEs or DEs, we could remove them from it easily, I think, too.
Yeah. I think, yeah, we can talk about it offline, Craig, but I think that, yeah, that's something that we should incorporate. So we can talk about it further offline, but at the very least, the project engineer and the resident engineer should be notified.
Yeah, I think we can do that. Okay, I'll coordinate with you.
Okay, sorry for interrupting. You can continue.
Oh, that's what I had to show pretty much. The last thing I wanted to mention is that I have updated. I've shared with many of you over like recent months, just the little how-to guide we have for how to fill out the progress payments. I have updated that with some slightly different screenshots to more match what these updates include. And then I made one shorter PDF here that I'll share with Cord that maybe he can upload to the wiki that is kind of the steps just for filling out materials on hand with these newer screenshots, just so that you can find that reference in the wiki if needed when you're at progress payment time. But that was all I had to demo for it, at least. Happy to answer any other payment questions, though, too. So yeah, if you start a payment next week, or I guess if you have an open one that hasn't been submitted yet, and you go into it next week, you should start to see those slight differences. And if you can't figure something out, definitely contact us right away and we can get you unstuck or even turn off that feature if we have to, as I mentioned. All right. Anything else to go over, Cord? Or
Nope, that's it. But if you do have any questions, please let us know now. And if not, that's all we have for today. Thanks everyone for joining. Always feel free to reach out to Econ or support@headlight.com. Yeah, you have a good rest of your day. Thanks, Greg, for
everybody.
joining.
Mhm.
All right, Craig, I think we're good to go. Thanks,
Okay,
everybody.
thanks. Bye.